These unlucky lottery winners learned the hard way the lesson that so many movies have been trying to teach us all these years. Money just doesn't buy happiness.
If you won all the money, what would you do with it?
Bunch of hookers and cocaine.
Michael Carroll proved that meme all too true. In 2002, he was working as a garbage man in England when he won £9.7 million. That's about $14 million. Just 19 years old, Carroll picked up the life-changing check while wearing an ankle monitor thanks to his past run-ins with the law. Carroll promptly bought a mansion and classed down the place by continuing to live the drug-fueled life he'd already been living. He threw lavish parties in which the guest of honor was crack cocaine, got himself arrested several times, and managed to spend every cent he had within 4 years.
What have you done with your money? Sex, drugs, and booze.
Carroll eventually went to jail for 9 months after he and some friends invaded a Christian rock concert to worship the Lord by beating up several attendees. Since blowing all his winnings, Carroll has reportedly sobered up and has been spotted working various low-level jobs in factories and warehouses. Willie Hurt won $3.1 million in 1989, more than enough money to ensure that he and his family would be financially secure for the rest of their lives. But in the end, Willie was brought down by a bad investment, namely crack cocaine. Within 2 years, he'd spent every dime on his addiction, was divorced and estranged from his wife and family. Oh, and he was charged with murder. It seemed that Hurt had taken up with a girlfriend named Wendy Elizabeth Kimmy. On September 19, 1991, Kimmy's body was found in the room with a gunshot wound to her head. Hurt wound up turning himself in and making a confession, or at least that's what someone told him he did, since he claimed to not remember any of it. When Suzanne Mullins won $4.1 million in 1993, she opted to receive her money in annual payments, totaling close to $50,000 a year after taxes. Fast forward 10 years and she's $150,000 in debt. Unlike Carroll and Hurt, Mullins' journey from millionaire to debtor began with good intentions and zero crack cocaine. According to Forbes, Mullins' son-in-law was very ill and his medical care cost more than $1 million. Mullins was determined to pay for his treatment, so she took out a loan of nearly $200,000 against her winnings, agreeing to pay back the debt as her annual payments came in. In 2000, the lottery rules changed and Mullins was allowed to take the remainder of her winnings in a lump sum. That's all well and good, but the problem was that she stopped making payments on the loan. The foundation sued and Mullins was ordered to pay more than $150,000, but her lawyer at the time claimed she had zero assets. When Billie Bob Harrell won $31 million in the Texas lottery in 1997, he was determined to use his newfound wealth for good. Carroll had barely been getting by while working a series of low-paying jobs, but after beginning his annual payments of $1.24 million, Carroll tried to make a positive change in the lives of the people around him. He bought homes and cars for family and friends and made large donations to his church.
Hey. Money!
Carroll gave away so much money that it actually strained his marriage. Well, that and the fact that he started having an affair. His wife filed for divorce, and needing some fast cash, Carroll took out a loan against his future winnings, netting him only $2.25 million against more than $6 million in future payments. After an attempted reconciliation with his wife failed, Carroll sadly took his own life less than 2 years after his lottery win, and a failure to plan for his tax burden ate up the rest of his fortune. When Denise Rossi won $1.3 million via the California lottery in 1996, she had one goal in mind: divorcing her husband, Thomas. Rossi filed for divorce just 11 days after her win, leaving Thomas stunned at the sudden end of his 25-year marriage. Thomas was going through a rough financial patch following the divorce. Then he accidentally received a letter from a company offering to advance Denise's money against her lottery winnings, which was news to Thomas as Denise had neglected to tell both him and the court about her big win. Was it a case of forgetfulness or a scheme to skirt the laws of California so that she wouldn't have to share her winnings with her husband? Considering that she had arranged to have her checks delivered to her mother's house, it's safe to say it was probably the latter. Thomas agreed, and a judge did as well. After Thomas sued Denise, the judge awarded him the entire $1.3 million as a punishment for her attempted fraud. When William Bud Post won $16.2 million in 1988, he reportedly only had about $2.46 in his bank account. It was an incredible twist of fortune, but it seemed like Bud was determined to get back to being broke as quickly as possible. Within 2 weeks of receiving his first payment, Bud had spent close to $300,000, and after 3 months, he was $500,000 in debt. On top of some big purchases, he was sued by his landlady and part-time girlfriend, who claimed that he'd promised to split his winnings with her. She won the case, but Bud refused to pay, so a judge froze his lottery payments. Since Bud had borrowed against those payments to free up short-term cash, that was a bit of a problem. Though not as problematic as his estranged brother hiring an assassin to kill him. Incredibly, Post managed to sell everything, using his remaining lottery payments to get out of debt, and he still wound up with $2.65 million. Finally, a happy ending. Oh, only if you ignore the fact that he squandered those millions within a year, spent some time in jail, and he was living on $450 a month when he passed away in 2006. Marva Wilson set out to be a sensible lottery winner after she won about $2 million in Missouri in 2008. Wilson bought 2 houses, but then used most of her winnings to establish an annuity that guaranteed her an income of $30,000 a year. Seems like a pretty smart and responsible strategy. Wilson needed some help with a real estate matter in 2010, and someone introduced her to a woman named Freya Pearson, who was hired to set up a lien on one of Wilson's properties and to help with filing her taxes. Again, seems like the responsible thing to do, right? Well, it would have been if Pearson hadn't taken control of Wilson's finances, set up a nonprofit company in her own name, and transferred all of Wilson's remaining money into it. Suddenly $500,000 richer, Pearson then lived the high life, gambling, buying nice clothes, and traveling around the world. By the time Wilson figured out what had happened, Pearson had spent every dime, and she was eventually sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud and money laundering. How do you make a millionaire go broke? Apparently you give him a crapload of extra money. Jack Whittaker already had a net worth of $17 million in 2002 when he won nearly $315 million in the Powerball jackpot. Soon after, Whittaker's good fortune took a turn for the worse. His teenage granddaughter died in 2004 after battling drug addiction. His daughter passed away in 2009. And somewhere along the way, his uninsured house burned down to the ground. In the midst of these tragedies, Whittaker told a local newspaper, "I wish I would have torn the ticket up. Maybe a more helpful wish would have been better decision-making skills," as after his big payday, Whittaker was arrested on DUI charges and sued by a casino for not paying his debts. He was also seen frequently in local strip clubs, drunk and offering $10,000 to women to sleep with him. He often bragged about carrying large amounts of money with him, and he was robbed several times as a result, once losing a briefcase containing $500,000 after bragging about having it out in his truck. Whittaker was broke by 2007. When David Lee Edwards won $27 million as part of a Powerball lottery pot in 2001, he was a former convict and recovering drug addict living in his parents' basement. It may sound like the beginning of a heartwarming story about second chances, but as it turns out, it's more of a cautionary tale. In an incredible shopping spree that could make for one heck of a movie montage, Edwards somehow managed to spend $12 million in just 1 year. In the middle of it all, he also got married for a second time, and Edwards and his wife decided to add some drugs to the mix. Eventually, his mansion was foreclosed on, forcing them to move into a warehouse he used to store his cars. He was hospitalized for a while, debts went unpaid, and he divorced his wife, who took her anger out on her new boyfriend by stabbing him several times in a motel. When he passed away while under hospice care in 2013 at the age of 58, he had spent every penny of his $27 million. We now introduce the quickest way to lose your lottery winnings. Just lose the ticket. Martyn and Kay Tott played the lottery weekly, always playing the same numbers. On Monday, March 5, 2001, they watched the winning numbers on television and realized they'd won £3 million, or about $5 million. But their excitement quickly disappeared when they couldn't find the ticket. The Totts called up the lottery and had enough details to have an official investigation launched. In the end, it was concluded that they had almost certainly bought the winning ticket as they'd claimed. However, since they hadn't redeemed the ticket within the required 3 months, they were disqualified.
So you get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
The strain led the Totts to split up, and Martyn did what anyone in his situation would do and joined a cult as he searched for meaning in a cruel universe. Callie Rogers was just 16 years old in 2003 when she won a lottery in England worth £1.9 million, equal to about $2.9 million. But like most 16-year-olds, she made some bad decisions. Rogers also spent a good amount of money on breast implants, lavish trips, and fancy cars. Most of Callie's money went to her true love and the apparent Achilles heel for most lottery winners. Yep, you guessed it, cocaine. Apparently $400,000 worth of it too.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
All jokes aside, this story isn't very happy at all. Rogers attempted suicide 4 times after winning the money and is completely broke today. She had a pretty traumatic childhood prior to her winnings, but insists she's happy in her new, less lucrative life. In 2005, Lara and Robert Griffiths bought a lottery ticket on a whim and wound up winning £1.8 million, or $2.4 million. Robert spent a load of money recording an album with his band, complete with an expensive publicist to promote them, but they only managed to sell 600 copies of their single. Together, they launched a beauty salon and made some real estate investments, just in time for the global housing crisis in 2008. By 2009, the couple still had $900,000 left, but their house burned down and the salon business was failing. Roger fully embraced the rock and roll lifestyle by having an affair and leaving, and Lara descended the corporate ladder by taking a job at the very salon she'd once owned in order to pay her bills. If you or anyone you know is having suicidal thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK 8255.